Hey, Case, we got a really fun video today because this is a sad time of year.
Yeah, it is. This is when we talk about the cars that are not going to be returning for next year.
Yeah, so we call them the RIP, Rest in Peace cars for 2025, and our friends over at Car and Driver have put together a comprehensive list. So let's get at it.
Yeah, and first on the list, we have a car that I actually really like a lot, and it's specifically the coupe and convertible version of the Audi A5, S5, and RS5.
Yeah, dude, those were some really badass car sedans, coupes, convertibles. These have all been run over by the dinosaurs that are SUVs and crossovers.
Yeah, and they are still going to be making four-door versions of those cars, but who knows? Maybe at some point they'll replace that gap in the lineup. Now, next on the list, we have also a pretty interesting car, the Bugatti Chiron, but the reason that it's leaving is not necessarily a sad one.
Yeah, it's being replaced by the
Tourbillon.
Yeah, glad you said it, not
Right?
me. I'm not into watches, but apparently that is a mechanism in a classic watch. And, dude, I mean, these are $2 to $5 million cars when everything's said and done. So they're rarefied air. And I remember I was talking to the PR rep for Bugatti at the Geneva Auto Show when that still was happening, and she was telling me that like the average Bugatti owner has like 50 cars, 14 yachts. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? This is not somebody who's out there cross-shopping it against anything really.
Yeah, no, this is a car that's definitely well outside of our reach, but still a pretty cool car nonetheless. And next on the list, we have a more accessible vehicle that's also pretty cool. It's a Chevy Camaro.
Yeah, no, that's been dying a long time. That's been one of those, like, is it dead yet? And it just keeps kind of soldiering on. But it is a shame. Obviously, muscle cars are going the way of the Dodo, the Charger, the Challenger, are turning electric. The Camaro kind of, I think one of the problems with the Camaro was, first of all, the seating position in the latest generation was weird, right? You kind of sit deep down in the car and you feel like you can't see out of it. But more importantly, I think Chevy had committed to making the Corvette the halo car. And it's hard to live under the Corvette as a performance car. And I think in some ways that's what killed it.
Yeah, which makes for interesting times over at GM. Where's our front engine V8 car?
It leaves the Mustang the only real muscle car standing. And thank God.
Yeah, well, because the Mustang is still good.
I know, yeah. All right, what's the next one on our list?
Next, we have the Ferrari 812, and this is another vehicle that's not very accessible, but another vehicle that's making way for a new model.
Yeah, the, how do you say 12 in Italian, do you know?
Oh,
cylindry?
No idea. Yeah, the 12 cylindry.
The 12 cylindry. I got to say, Ferrari has some of the worst names in the automotive. Really? How many cylinders in that car? Oh, it's 12. Come on, Ferrari. You could do better than that. Once again, this is kind of out of our wheelhouse. We don't necessarily...
We're not the supercar guys.
No. We don't get invites from Ferrari.
So the 812 will make way for that 12 cylindry. Which seems like a relatively even trade. Also in the Ferrari lineup, we're losing the F8 Spider, so you still have the option of the SF90, but now that convertible F8 is going away.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that because I've never driven it. I don't know it.
Either.
Yeah, so I have nothing to add. This one I have a lot to add though too.
Yeah, this is an interesting car and an interesting story. It's the Fisker Ocean.
I just think this is one of those cars where it was introduced because it was forced to be introduced early, and it wasn't quite baked. It was kind of half baked, and it had a lot of issues. It's one thing to be able to design a beautiful car, which I think this is. It's another thing to be able to actually execute on that and deliver these cars. It was also very expensive. I want to say this has the distinction of the car that lost the most money if you bought it. And all the ingredients were there for it to be successful. It was built by Magna.
Yeah.
In Austria that does the G-Wagon.
Well, and it's got a lot of cool features too, like the fact that all of the windows
California
roll
mode,
down.
yeah.
It's really cool. Even that little window toward the back. That being said, there are some deals on these if you want to roll the dice.
Yeah,
We've been seeing some for a little over $20,000. It's a lot of car for $20,000, but it is a roll of the dice.
I mean, the problem is you can roll all the windows down, but if the fob doesn't work to unlock it.
Yeah. You never know.
Which it didn't work.
No guarantees.
All right, this car is kind of old school still. What is it?
It's the Infiniti Q50. And again, we're seeing a similar trend that we've been seeing for a while here where sedans are really struggling.
Especially sports sedans, right? Cool car. For a while, it had its time in the sun, but somehow the almighty crossover and SUV, especially the ones that are now boasting 5, 6, 7, 800 horsepower. I just drove the Lamborghini Urus, right, with 789 horsepower in an SUV. That car performs incredibly for what it is. And as much as I like sports sedans, they're once again they're getting run over by the latest crop of high-performance crossovers.
But that Q50, to its credit, is a design that aged really well, good-looking car, so it'll be sad to see it go. Now, for next on our list, actually the next couple cars, we're going to see a trend here. This first one is the Jaguar E-Pace.
Yeah, when that was unveiled, I got to actually drive that in Greece, which was
cool.
Pretty cool, yeah. And everybody was like shaking their head and scratching their head because we were like, shouldn't the I-Pace be the E-Pace and the E-Pace be the I-Pace? So it's a subcompact crossover that competes with cars like the Range Rover Velar.
Yeah.
I just think with Jaguar, it was just a little too late and a little too little, right? It kind of didn't exactly in America, especially resonate with a lot of people because it was a subcompact crossover, and BMW kind of owns that segment.
It's a crowded space.
It is a crowded space.
Now, next on the list, another Jaguar, but one that is near and dear to a lot of our hearts. This is the F-Type.
Yeah, same thing. I remember going on the launch of that. And of course, this has big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
The rub on this car was always that the interior didn't match kind of the beauty of the exterior. I love this car. I was impressed because they made it in so many different variants, right? There was a 6-cylinder, there was a 4-cylinder, there was an 8-cylinder, there was an all-wheel drive version of it. You can get these now. I've been looking around for them for anywhere on the low end for maybe $30,000, $40,000.
Which is a lot of car for the money, and it had a good long run.
And I took it on the track, and this one you can tell the one we're looking at. It's got the 4 tailpipes.
Yeah.
And that was the 8-cylinder. The one thing I would say about it is you're actually better off with the smaller engine on this one because it just feels a lot more nimble and a lot more fun. All right, now there's the next one. The
I-Pace is next on our list, a car that we've already mentioned. Once again, a car in a very crowded space.
So maybe, just like the BMW i3 and the i8, maybe it was just ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Right. It has a cab forward design. I also got to go and drive this in Europe. And I was mightily impressed by the fact that this was an electric car and it was rolling on like 20s, which back in the day when this was unveiled, there were only Teslas and Leafs.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool to see an all-wheel drive car, rolling on big tires.
Yeah, with a little bit of flair.
Yeah, and it had, a good range. I want to say initially it was like 220, and then eventually they got up to like 239. Once again, stupid name. Should have been the E-Pace, not the I-Pace.
Sure.
246 here, according to Car and Driver.
Yeah.
So, lots of room, very innovative, but maybe too early for its time. And now, of course, too late for its time.
Yeah, and then finally, we have the Jaguar XF, which once again, a sedan, a vehicle category that's not really standing the test of time, at least this current era in vehicles.
So I have a giant need for this one in the XFRS version. I got to drive that. One hell of a sports car, over 500 horsepower. The good thing about the Jaguar XF is that it has that classic ability of Jaguar to combine a sporty ride with dynamic handling.
Yeah.
Without beating you up. So it has this magic ability to be able to go around a turn, be communicative, and yet, when the road gets rough, it doesn't feel like that Ioniq 5N that we have sitting out there, which is like riding on
beats you up a little bit.
Yeah. Cool car. This next car.
Well, something that probably fewer people will mourn the loss of. This is the Kia Forte. Not that it's a really bad car. I just don't know that it's got the same cult following as some of the other cars we've listed. And it's going to be replaced by the K4. So that's just going to be a nameplate that will stand better with the rest of Kia's lineup. So it's not that they're not going to be producing any affordable economy cars anymore. It's just that the Forte specifically is going away.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to head to head against the Corolla and the Civic, you better bring
That's
it.
Tough.
Yeah, it can't just be a value proposition because both of those cars have some magic, right? The Corolla, of course, is reliability, and the Civic is fun to drive. And the Forte was a solid, compact sedan, but given the choice between a Corolla and the Civic, I'd probably pick those two over a Forte.
Yeah, those names carry a lot of weight.
Oh, God, this is a cool car.
Yeah, so this is actually one of the few supercars even I've driven, is a Lamborghini Huracan. Once again, been around for a long time, successor to the Gallardo, and it's going to be replaced now with a new Lamborghini model that is doing away with the V10.
Yeah, the Temerario.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to a twin-turbo V8 that actually produces more horsepower than the outgoing.
Yeah, because it's also a hybrid system.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't drive the Lamborghini Huracan Sturato, which is the one that I'd really want. That's the off-roady one, which competes with the Porsche 911 Dakar. And I think that would be the one that is still going to be near and dear to my heart because I love off-roading.
And we live in Colorado.
The cool thing about Lamborghini, I just came back from driving the new Urus SE, which is also, like I said, the plug-in hybrid. Downsizing cylinders, but upsizing horsepower.
Yeah.
Those V8s sound pretty damn good.
Yeah.
You know what was interesting? So when I was doing the Urus, and maybe we could stick a little bit of this into the video. I can give you that video. They had like an exhaust note demonstration. And then afterwards, somebody asked them, they're like, this can't be legal in Europe because Europeans are much more
about
restricted.
decibel levels.
Yeah, and they said, no, this is the American version.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah.
For once, we get the good version.
We get the good one as opposed to, What's next?
Next on the list is a car that we won't miss as much as the Huracan. It's the Maserati Ghibli.
Yeah, Maserati has really struggled recently in kind of figuring out kind of their place in the sports car / supercar world. And basically what they've been doing is doing a lot of kind of part sharing and somewhat rebranding of other, in this case, Stellantis. Back in the day, it was FCA cars. And I think it showed, like the switchgear on a lot of these cars was not unique. And of course, the other, big elephant in the room is Maserati has never been known for having the best reliability, and that has not changed, unfortunately.
No, and nor did it change with this more entry-level Ghibli. It doesn't have the best reputation. Next on the list, we also have the Maserati Levante. And once again, like a lot of other cars on this list, this is a vehicle that lived in a very crowded space of luxury SUVs, with which there was of course, a lot of competition.
Yeah, so Porsche came along and basically showed that if you've got a 911, you want to have a Cayenne to take the kids to school.
Yeah.
Right? And it just, blew up. And then all the other car companies, especially the exotic or sports car companies, kind of put their head up and said, wow, we should do the same thing. And by the time I was there actually in Geneva when this unrolled, and by the time this was unveiled, it was just too little too late, right? People were kind of over it.
Yeah.
There were
They'd seen it before.
Yeah, there were a few companies like once again, I'm going back to the Urus because it's relevant. It accounts for more than 50% of Lamborghini sales, right?
Yeah.
But same problem with the Aston Martin DBX 707, right? These cars are kind of late to the game, and I think anybody who wanted a sporty SUV probably already bought a BMW, a Porsche, or maybe a Lamborghini.
Yeah, and now, once again, we've got Maserati with the Quattroporte.
Ancient.
Yeah, and probably one of the fastest depreciating cars that you can buy. Quattroporte is a name that's been around for a long time, so it might return in different form. But yeah, this is a car that, once again, it's a sedan, a sports sedan, not something that a lot of people are out there trying to buy right now.
The problem with Maserati, at least all three of these cars, is they're kind of the car that if you're in the know, you would never buy. But then if you see people who are driving them, you're like, that person is buying it for the nameplate and not for, what we consider the holy grail, and that is how it drives, how it performs. And so it kind of gets this double whammy of being not reliable, having, really bad depreciation, and then not being appreciated by, and rightfully so to some extent, by the enthusiast crowd.
With these particular models especially, you get a lot of the downsides of getting an exotic Italian car, not necessarily all of the upsides.
You're exactly right.
Now, next on the list is a car
Clubby.
we actually like a lot. It's the Mini Clubman.
Do the two go together, utility and mini? I mean, it is a tiny. They could,
Yeah.
if you're looking for a city car where you can still go and like go antiquing on the weekend, right?
Yeah.
And it's easy to park. But in general, it's a hard sell in America. And that's what the Clubby was, right? The Clubman was the one that had the most utility, the one that had the most space. But having said that, the huge asterisk is the most space for a Mini. There was also a van version of it that was even, more rare.
Yeah, and now they're going to have the Mini Aceman, which is an electric vehicle that will kind of serve to replace it. But still, we'll miss the Clubman.
But a Mini should be tiny, and it should
Yeah.
have this magic of being bigger on the inside than on the outside. And the last few have kind of lost that.
I would say so too. Now, next on the list, we've got the Mitsubishi Mirage and the Mirage G4. Once again, an economy car that has really got to do a lot to compete with other vehicles like what we mentioned, like the Corolla and like the Civic, like some of the nameplates that are out there that carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, and I think Mitsubishi in general, in America, you can't be like in the shallow end of the pool. You know what I mean? I think you got to be all in. And
Yeah.
I kind of feel like Mitsubishi is kind of teetering on staying in this market. So they have the Outlander, they have the Outlander Sport, right? Those are selling pretty well, especially the plug-in hybrid versions. It's hard if you don't have a complete lineup of cars to continue to sell cars, especially if you're trying to be a mainstream auto manufacturer.
Yeah, for sure. But the Outlander does fill a nice space, being a relatively small 3-row.
I think it's the smallest 3-row case.
Yeah. It's a good option for some people
Yeah.
out there, so it fills a bit of a niche, but it's not too surprising, like you're saying, to see other Mitsubishi models.
But how long can you continue to stay in
Going away.
business selling,
Just one car,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, technically.
I mean, you can ask Chrysler the same thing. You can,
Yeah.
you can ask potentially
Now Jaguar.
Dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, next on the list is a car that we love and have loved for a long time. It's the Nissan GTR, but this is a car that I think it's time for it to see the sunset.
I've been looking at used car prices on the GTR.
Yeah.
The first ones had some transmission issues, but they're down to like $50,000, $60,000 for kind of nice examples that aren't too high mileage. You probably get them cheaper than that. It's a car that was Godzilla when it came out, but I feel like it's been left in the dust because the calling card of the GTR was just incredible torque and incredible acceleration. Right?
Turbo lag?
Well, it wasn't. I mean, the turbo lag wasn't horrible. I mean, it has these giant turbos. The sound was like a giant vacuum cleaner, which has now come back in vogue with the Porsche GT4 RS, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a car that time has left in the dust, and Nissan unfortunately did not update it. The word is the next one's going to be electric.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
For sure.
But they could have. They didn't just have to add like an Nismo version, right? Or change the colors. They actually could have kept developing it, and you could have had a car which has the iconic history of a 911, but it could have stayed the same shape, but subtle improvements. And somehow there hasn't been much of an improvement from when it was first introduced, which was how many years ago was this now?
Oh, 2008.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. When the car came out, it was pretty affordable for what it was, and it was very fast. And as the years went on, they made fewer and fewer of them.
Yep.
The price got inflated, and the car didn't really feel like it was a new vehicle. It felt like an older vehicle that they just continued to
and the price
kind
kept
of
going
slightly
up.
adjust. Yeah. and
Last
the
time I
price went
looked,
up
these
a
things
lot.
were like 175.
Yeah.
Don't see it, dude.
No, especially when you can buy a used one that's the same basic thing underneath. So we love the GTR, but it was time for it to go. Now, one vehicle that I will miss, once again from Nissan, is the Titan, because the Titan, though it didn't sell all that well, it was actually a really good and very functional truck. We did a lot of testing with it, and it was a good machine.
Yeah, I got to say that Cummins that they put into it was maybe a misstep, right?
Yeah,
because it was kind of this midway between a heavy duty,
The XD,
yeah. But the truck itself was phenomenal, or is phenomenal in terms of its value,
Yeah.
right? In terms of its reliability, I think it's actually a very good-looking truck. I just think that, once again, you got to be in the deep end of the pool if you're going to go up against Chevy, Ram, and Ford in the truck world, and you can't like just be in half. And Nissan, I don't think ever seriously committed to it, or maybe they did commit to it, but they just didn't have the money to do so for what it takes to compete against the big boys.
Yeah, that's a difficult area to compete in when people are so tribal about what truck brands they do want to buy a vehicle from. And the Titan, as great of a truck as it was, just wasn't selling well. So we'll be sad to see that go.
And then, of course, the other problem with the Titan was the Tundra, right?
Yeah.
So if you wanted a Japanese truck, let's say you didn't want one from the big three, you'd go with the Tundra because obviously you had, once again, Toyota's reputation for reliability, and Nissan does not have that reputation in general. It has a reputation for value, but in the truck world, I think reliability
wasn't enough to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
Now, next on the list, we have the Ram 1500 Classic.
Which we own, dude.
Yeah, we did. And it was a very affordable truck. It was a good workhorse. It was a nice thing to have around. But, of course, the Ram 1500 Classic was aging. What they had done is basically continued to produce the previous model pickup truck, the previous generation, and they called it the Classic, which made it a more affordable option, which was awesome. But, once again, the underpinnings of this truck and everything go back a long time. This truck was pretty dated, so it was about time for it to make way for some new models.
And it wasn't that much cheaper. It wasn't like you were looking like at a 50% discount off of the latest version, because Stubby, the one that we bought, because we wanted all-wheel drive, that added, I believe it was $7,500 case to the base truck. So I remember when I was looking at getting a Classic, because we wanted to buy the cheapest truck in America, it would start at like $31,000. But then if you wanted all-wheel drive, all of a sudden it jumped up $7,500.
Something they could put on the website to show that they had this low entry price, but it wasn't really the truck that they were selling or planning to sell. Now, next on the list, we have the Toyota Venza. A relatively short run for this car, because I remember this car got revealed around the time I started working here, which was 4 years ago. So not too long ago.
I would say it was a filler. It was kind of a gap filler. So I was in Japan for the first time this time last year, and what I noticed, Case, is that they have a lot of sedans that ride very tall. Right. Because they have an aging population, right? So when you get to be, sorry, your hips start to have issues, and it's hard to get in and out of anything that's either too tall or too low, and so because of the aging population, I think Japan has a lot of these kind of tall sedans, and this is what this is, right? So the Venza was a placeholder until the Crown Signia came along.
Yeah, so now there's the Crown Signia if you want something that's in that space. That's going to be Toyota's option, and that is the last vehicle there on our list. So quite a few cars, some that we'll miss, some that we won't miss so much. Of everything on this list, do you have a favorite of one that you're the most upset to see go away? Yeah, the Storado. I can't blame you for that.
I called Lamborghini PR, and I had this crazy idea last year when they were first out, was to borrow one and a 911 Dakar and then drive it up the Alaska Highway.
And they didn't bite?
No, I think that even in the press leak, those cars eventually get sold, and the idea of putting like 3,500 miles on.
Yeah, some rugged miles too, not easy miles.
How about you, Case?
I think of everything on this list, what I'm going to miss the most might actually be the Camaro, just because I like muscle cars. I like there to be options. I like the Mustang as well. But I'm going to miss having that front-engine V8 muscle car from General Motors. So that would be my pick.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. We'll see, what happens in the future. But my gut tells me that any of those, during the heyday, or at least during our heyday, I'm not going back to the 60s, when you had the big engine Camaros and you had the GT350, GT500 Mustangs, and you had this kind of fierce competition going on between Ford and Chevy, and of course you had the Hellcats. That was just, we didn't know it, dude, but we were living in an incredible time.
A real golden age for muscle cars.
Yeah.
Absolutely, in crazy horsepower numbers.
Yeah.
And even versions of these cars that actually also handled well.
I remember Nathan drove the ZL1 version of the Camaro.
Yeah.
fell in love with that thing.
Yeah.
Just fell in love with it. I think that thing had like 600 horsepower. I took it onto the racetrack, terrified me,
Yeah.
but still in a fun way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, they're awesome cars.
They're awesome cars, and I hope that we're not done with that. I hope we can come back to that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that at some point there will be a resurgence of these vehicles, that they won't go away forever. Because look, I mean, in the past there have been times that muscle cars have gone away and it seemed like they would never return, and they did.
And
so I hold out hope.
And let's face it, we've got that Ioniq N sitting out there, Ioniq 5N with the fake engine node, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's fine, but it ain't no Hellcat.
No, it's not the same.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Ciao.